see if that grease can stay in there, or if it'll get washed out by the oil. Alright, so now we have the grease in blue. When we run the saw, we should get yellow oil in yellow. I'm a terrible sinner. I never grease the bar tips on my chainsaw. I've used chainsaws for years and I've never blown up a bar tip, nor have I put grease in them. Can you think of any machine other than chainsaw bar tips that require grease and oil to lubricate them? I don't know very many. In my experience tearing apart chainsaw bar tips, they are not thoroughly sealed. The bearings are not sealed. Therefore, when that oil comes in, it wicks into that small 0.010 of an inch gap on both sides of that sprocket. You'll see, it wicks right in. First thing I'm going to do is shoot grease in this grease hole on this bearing. I'm going to have the camera set up kind of close up. That way you can see the grease go in, you can see it go into the bearings, and see what happens to the sprocket and the bearings with grease. Then I'm going to run the saw, and you're going to slowly see oil come in and swirl around in here. Then you'll see how the grease and the oil interact and what happens to the grease. I'll need to contact my priest. It may also be sinful to keep such a dirty workbench, but here we are. We've got kids and lots of projects. Okay, the end of this bar doesn't even have a grease hole. There's no grease hole provided. Here's another old saw. It's 288 XP. There is no oil hole in this bar tip. Yet I've had this same bar for many years. I've worn the paint off of it, scratched it quite a bit, and it's holding up. Never grease it. Never. The bar tip that came with that bar is supposed to be fancy. It does have a grease hole. I've never used it. There again, I've never blown up a bar tip. So I haven't noticed any difference in longevity between bar tips that I've greased and bar tips that I haven't. So that's kind of what led me to check a little bit deeper into how do these things work, what's in there, and what happens when you put grease in. Okay, here's the dye I bought. Here's the UV dye I bought. Got it at the auto parts store. Engine oil, transmission, power steering, fuel system, UV dye. I put a little bit of this on a chunk of wood, and I hope you can see it. I have a small flashlight that has a certain type of light, UV light. And when you shine it on it, it makes the UV dye glow yellow. You can see it in the bottle itself. Okay, here's a shot of the chainsaw bar that I modified. This is a cheap laminated steel bar. It's got 56 drive links. I've forgotten, I think that's 16 inch or 18 inches long. I'd have to check the specs on that. I don't remember exactly, but it's a cheap one. You can see in the end. All right, here's the bar tip. What I've done is everywhere there are these screws, I removed the welds or rivets that held these pieces together. Then I just straight up sawed across here, removed the metal plate, and I put a plastic clear plexiglass plate on there so that you can see through. With the visible light that we're viewing this with right now, you can't really see much. But I'll show you what happens when I turn off this light. And turn on the black light. Okay, turn on the special light and you can see the yellow. You can see the yellow glowing. So that way you can see where the oil is and how it flows through the chain and the bar and the sprocket. I mentioned at the beginning I'm a terrible sinner. Well, I've got more sins to confess. I use 15W40 diesel motor oil in my chainsaws as bar and chain oil. There's actually quite a bit of chemistry and science to grease and oil. People spend their whole careers with grease or oil or both. There are many different types of grease. There are base oils within grease and soaps and additives. The same with oil. It's basically crude oil, but it's been refined. It has many additives, detergents, and so on. I can't cover every possible combination of these, but in general, I think if you put oil with grease, typically it's going to mix together and create thin grease. Let me show you something. Here is a little grease gun. It's an Oregon brand grease gun loaded with blue bar and tip grease. That's been in my toolbox for about 15 years. It hasn't been used since I bought it. All right, here's the grease. This thing is made to inject grease into your bar tip. I never use it, but there it is. Grease. Okay, put the grease in the oil. Does it dissolve? No, not right away. Doesn't dissolve right away. Actually surprises me that it stays together. But it does get a little thinner. Doesn't instantly dissolve. But I think time, a few minutes, it sort of dissolves. See, this oil over here is almost gone. If you like videos about chainsaws, subscribe to the channel. You'll see more later. If you like good quality American socks, buy some Camel City Mill socks too. They're pretty nice. Okay, here's the saw. Going to zoom into the oil port, the oil cap, bar and chain oil cap. You can see here, you open the cap and shine the special light on it. You can see the dye shining. Okay, we're going to record putting grease in. We're going to use our little Oregon grease gun. We're going to put grease in the grease hole in the back. Okay. Did any grease go in? Yeah, I did. Let's rotate it around a little bit. A little bit more. You can see the blue color there. Rotate the chain around just a bit. All right, so you can see it goes out and kind of slimes over the sprocket there. Lubricates the bearings with the grease. And as you turn it, it goes onto the sprocket. We'll see if that grease can stay in there or if it'll get washed out by the oil. Found something a bit interesting here. As I use my UV light, kind of a blue tint, the grease kind of glows also kind of a blue color. Here's my lamp, UV lamp. So not only are we going to be able to see the grease in this bar in colored blue, we should be able to see the oil as it comes in, which will be colored bright yellow. All right. All right, so now we have the grease in blue. When we run the saw, we should get yellow oil in yellow. And I'll also, as a bonus, try to cut some wood. I'll stick a piece of seasoned poplar on top of the chain. I'll cut a little bit and see how the chips are dragged in to the bar tip, just for fun. Well, that was fun. It looked like as the oil came in, what you saw in yellow tended to dissolve the blue, dissolve the grease in every area except right where the bearings were, in the very center. It looked like the oil had trouble wicking all the way into the bearings if they were pre-filled with grease. I don't know how long it might take for the oil to dissolve that grease. Though the yellow seemed to wick all around the sprocket, it didn't seem to dissolve all the grease on the bearings. There are other videos I've done where I didn't grease first and the oil wicked all the way in, no problem, and went to the bearings. You could see yellow on each of the little discs, the little bearings. But in this case, the little bearings stayed blue, and it looked like like the grease stayed in there. So I was kind of surprised. I was curious how oil flows, how grease behaves in a bar tip, and I was surprised that the grease hung in there as long as it did. I thought the oil would dissolve it right away and wick right into the bearings, but it looked like the grease held its own, at least right inside the bearings, where you need the grease. Still, I haven't had trouble using only oil. Some people swear by grease. I guess both work. I don't know.